I certainly don't think most people see money as a positive in their life. They know when they have it, that's pretty good. But even when they have it, it's not necessarily a blessing for them. It's not necessarily bringing them joy. And that's where we've tried to come in. Money, economically, money is this medium of exchange, which is great. And I was thinking about that the other day, and I was just like, okay, what are you exchanging? And in order to earn that money at the job, like you mentioned, you're exchanging every single thing you've ever experienced and known, everything that formed you into you in that peak moment of like the next second, all of your network. Offline we were talking about ancestors, like all of your ancestors and what they did and how they formed you, your parents, your education, all of that, your entire person, everything about you rolls all up and becomes this thing that earns a little bit of money. And someone says, oh, money is just a medium of exchange. I'm like, well, yeah, but what have you exchanged? What's the trade? And what you've given is a little bit of you. And I don't mean that in any other way except all of your time, effort, energy, calories, blood, sweat, and tears that goes into earning that dollar. And it doesn't matter how you earn it, but just, you've done it. And so we have this massive amount of you on that side of the exchange equation. And then, which is, I think people can start to wrap their head around it, we might start to be able to help them frame money as maybe a positive if they just start seeing it as them. But where we see the really big fall off of contentment, confidence, is if you have this massive you on one side of that exchange equation, and then what are you exchanging money for? Well, anything we want. If that other side, how you spend your money, how you use it, isn't also very representative of you, that's where you get just a ton of friction, a ton of stress, dissatisfaction. And that's what we try and do at YNAB, is not talk about budgets. It's actually, we actually avoid that word completely because it has way too much baggage for people, where we just say, like, listen, you spend all this time earning money. We want you to also love how you spend it. It's meant to be spent. And I'm going to say that until I'm gone, is people have to feel that. They have to feel like, wow, look at everything I give up for this thing we call money, this precious, precious resource. Couldn't I also just give a little bit of intention and thought to how I expend it?
Why do you think people have such a hard time either adjusting their aperture or putting the right filters or lenses in so that they get that it's not a one-to-one exchange, right? If you got a big U, right, the ideal would be is that you actually get 2-3x of exchange right back when you actually spend it. What is so hard for people in that endeavor?
Yeah. Like the money, the world just thinks about money completely wrong. They see it as a chore, a to-do. They see it as something that's meant to be managed. In your line of work, you've probably run into this where it's like, hey, I've got my career figured out. I've even got my relationship with my spouse figured out, but I got to get my money figured out. And so people will do things like say, hey, let's figure out your financial life. We've got the health side dialed in, relationship dialed in. And I don't even like that framing. I don't like when people say things like, oh, well, my financial life, I do this. Is like your financial life. Like they're trying to constantly put it into like a box and kind of distance themselves from it. Or they'll say something really normal that I totally triggers me, where they'll be like, well, money is just a tool, Jesse. And they're not giving it its due. A tool in my shop, I can just pick it up, use it, set it down. It doesn't follow me around in my health and relationships and career and just constantly be like, hey, just tapping me like, hey. Like the tool you just can leave, but money, you can't leave it alone. You shouldn't leave it alone. But we're told it's a weird thing, Ben, because we're told simultaneously like, oh, that thing's evil and gross and it's kind of icky if you want some. And then at the same time, we're told like, hey, it's amazing when you have it. It's a strange thing. And so I've decided just to tell people, listen, money is you, meaning if you earn a lot of it, great. Not everyone's so blessed or able to just to think that way and earn a lot of money. Doesn't matter. But when you give yourself for that money, we want to make sure that that money turns around and serves you well. And I'm amazed at how many times we can have people not earn any more money than they did 6 months before when they started. But they just tell me like, Jesse, I just feel content. Like, I just feel good. Everything's just, I don't know. Like all this money stress is gone. They haven't earned a bit more. But the world, man, the world will tell you both like it's gross and boy, do you want a lot of it. It's totally mixed messages. I think that makes it tough for us.
So let's walk through Steelman. Why do people think money's evil? And then we'll go to the other side of the spectrum of like, you need so much of it.
Yeah. On the money evil side, money is the most powerful thing in the world. It can buy propaganda. It can buy missiles. It can buy influence. It can do everything that is even imaginable that is awful in the world. Money is right there in the thick of it. So you could take that route and just say, man, look at how awful the world is. Look at all the bad that humanity, and you could just be like, oh, and look, it's all because of all this money here. You could do that. And I think it's an easy argument to make for people where they just say, hey, I just see how, money just corrupts people. And so they give money, kind of make it shoulder the blame. They don't spend a lot of time asking themselves like what kind of marvelous things money has done for them. Like, you actually said it really well when you're talking about the exchange. I mean, wealth is created in an exchange if it's two free willing people, no coercion. Like when you work for me, I work for you. We both walk away like, boy, I got the better end of that deal. Not like we're, being sneaky or anything, but you trade your money for time and then you're just like, oh yeah, that was worth it. And the person that gave you the money is like, that was worth it. I mean, every one of my team members, I can look at them and be like, boy, I'm loving this trade. And hopefully when they get their paycheck, they're like, boy, I'm loving this trade. And so that's wealth creation. Money does that. Money allows us to trade and create wealth. And when you talk about that zero fee exchange, that it's going to be a net positive every time where someone can make that trade and be like, I got the better end of this deal. And money is this technology, people will call it a shared myth. I don't like that either. But it's an ability for us to kind of store up all of our time and effort and economic output. We can store it for a little while and then deploy it in a way that we find in however, whatever way we want.
In May of 2020, I had a team-wide meeting and I just said, hey, we're either going to live what we teach or one of two things are going to happen. People are not going to be here anymore because we just have no turnover. And we had so many people that were with us for such a long time, which is great on one level, but on the other level, I wasn't just allowing the issues to resolve because I was the in-between. And then everybody wanted to make me happy, so they just kind of subdued themselves. And that was just a lack of leadership because I just didn't understand. And so I said, I'm just going to sell the company. And so in November of 2020, I just had this moment where the person that was most important to me in the business, which was my sister, was being mistreated by one of the partners. And I just said, it's over. It's done. I called and I said, I'm out. I'm going to sell this. Now, that's not a good way to sell because now they know that you're, disenchanted and you're not happy. So I sold it for a lot less than was on the table in 2019. But I had a licensing deal. I'm like, well, this is a rich licensing deal and it's creating cash flow for me. And I just have to do a webinar once a month and I film a couple videos that go out for ads. And soon it just started to fall apart because my values and the firm's values were not aligned, not the firm as much as one individual. And it's just someone I didn't want to have a relationship with anymore. So I cut off the licensing deal and found myself in a place where I was like, man, I had this business. And even though I knew that my identity wasn't the business, it was this place I could create value. And I had 2,200 people that were paying us monthly for this value creation. And I all of a sudden was just gone. But they didn't really know. And I knew. And I kind of became a victim for a bit. I felt very victimized by the situation. And that's so disgusting to say and to look back and think about. It wasn't until my wife said, when you can get over this, that I was like, wow, I need to move on, because I was stuck in the past. And I would you could read my books and be like, Garrett, you should read your own books where you talk about this. And all of that is so easy to write in theory, in philosophy. But when there's real stakes and there's real emotion and there's true pain and there's difficulty, it's a different story. And so as I was writing the book Money Unmasked, this whole thing was unmasked to me in the writing process. You know, like I wrote in the last chapter, what if you just had a frame in your life that said, what would love do? And here I was in a situation where I was upset and going, what would love do? And I was like, I don't want to hear that. But it was really, relationships are really important to me. And, you know, I just like to make everything work. And when it didn't work, I felt a sense of disappointment in myself. I felt, I don't know, sad, felt like there was loss. I felt confused about what to do next. Because when I sold it, I had that licensing deal. And over those 2 years, I did comedy. I was traveling and I got my comedy special on Amazon Prime, and I was on the topic of money, and I was having the time of my life. But then I realized, like, I can't put my name behind this anymore. This isn't aligned with who I am. And I'm going to have to walk away from 7 figures a year.
Ooh.
And I did. That was tough.
Wow. Well, Garrett, has anyone ever told you that you like have like the candor of like what is Ernest Hemingway, of just telling the truth? And what's so crazy when I say the word truth, and I just had a conversation with a guest yesterday, and the word truth is so subjective, right? It's from your lens, your frame. But I'm so curious. The word that kept popping in my head as I was just listening to you now is this word, kind honesty. And there's a paradigm, right, of how honest you can be, like harsh honest, and then in terms of like almost like dishonest honest, right? That's maybe that people pleasing. It seems like there's like this real sweet spot right in the middle of kind honesty. But I've always been fascinated with, why is honesty so hard to do? And specifically, why is it so hard to be kind honest?
Well, I'm going to go back to when I took Landmark. I was in my 20s. I came out of Landmark Forum, Landmark Education, and it was about, you know, being in integrity. And so I was committed. But the problem was, most people, they have this layer of, and I was this way before, of only telling part of the truth because you don't want to hurt someone's feelings. And if you tell the whole truth, people kind of would freak out at first because they're not used to that level of honesty. They're used to sugarcoating and context and you know, only hearing part of the story. And when I started getting really direct, it made people kind of like uneasy. Like, whoa, like it wasn't like I was being vicious. I was just being fully truthful. And so, for example, this person that chose to always hearing yes, decided last minute to cancel a meeting with me, and he wanted to reschedule. I said, there's no reason to reschedule. It's cool. It's not a priority for you. I don't want to make it a priority for me. And he showed up. And he was like, no one's ever talked to me that way. I was like, well, I just don't need to have a relationship like that. And it's fine. You're busy. You've got a lot going on. And this is what you've become accustomed to, is that you're powerful enough that people will accommodate. I'm in a place where I'm okay with that. And so I started to learn over time how to be more loving in those things and have, like, you know, a positive no. Because I think it was hard for me to say no early on because I just want to be liked. It's just, I want to be liked. And I thought if I said no, that people wouldn't like me. And so I said yes when what I meant was no, and I had to pay the price. And not only did I have to pay the price, my wife had to pay the price, because now I was overextended. Now I was overcommitted. And early in our marriage, when we had young kids, and I think between 0 and 4, they're just romance and sleep terrorists. They're cute. That's why they get away with it. But they're romance and sleep terrorists, and I'm just saying yes to everything. And she says, at what point do you realize your yeses or nos to us? And she's like, I just feel like a single mom. I'm just going to all these things, and you're on the road promoting a book. And she's like, what if you just win the booby prize? You've helped everyone's life but your own. And I was like, damn, she's just so clean and clear when she says these things. And I'm just like, wow, But then when I sold the business, she was kind of like, do you ever leave the house? Like, when are you going to go somewhere? So I did a comedy tour, which was nice. But it's definitely, if I look at my own life, I just had this desire to be liked. I just wanted everyone to like me. And so I would overextend myself in order to be liked. And then I read the book Give and Take by Adam Grant. And it was like, hey, there's givers and takers. And the thing is, if you give so much that you lose who you are, you're going to be at the bottom. And I realized in some parts of my life, that's who I was. And so in 2012, I remember that was the year where I was going to just show my wife she was more important than my business. And so I only said yes to 10 speaking gigs, and I brought her and the kids. Made me a less than ideal speaker because I would speak on stage and I was done. I was with my family, right? So it's like people want to ask questions, they want to hang out. I was off doing something with the family. So that wasn't necessary, but I just talked to my team and I said, we're going to improve our margins this year. We're going to clean things up. So even if our revenue dips because you're not working as much, we'll be fine. And we were. We had a dip in revenue, but we made the same. Everybody in the firm made the same. We just got some programs that were no longer valid, that we're saying we're not going to do those and we're going to focus on these others. And my wife at one day was like, are we going to be okay? I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, well, you sure are home a lot, and it was an amazing year. And she was happy, but she was also like, who is this guy? And I just decided I was the guy that had a vision for my marriage to be a premier romantic and an extraordinary husband, and put that at the forefront. And then I would make the other things work. And I just got to a point where I realized I could say no in really nice ways. Like, yeah, that's not for me, but if I know someone that's good for, I'll let you know. People are like, hey, I've got an investment. I'm not doing investments that are outside of my business right now. Thanks for thinking of me. But it's not for me. I'll let you know if it changes. So that way I'm not opening the invite for them to come back. And I just stopped wasting a lot of time on things that were just to appease people.
That's amazing. Number one, you, like me, outkicked your coverage when you got married. It's probably actually when someone goes, are you a great salesperson, Garrett? They're like, you just go, have you met my wife?
Yeah, totally.
But, it's so interesting, this idea, your no is a yes to us. And oftentimes your yes to someone else is a no to us. And this give and take, like this, Adam Grant, I just imagine this slider scale that as you're being such a giver, you're actually taking from something, right? It's Newton's law, equal and opposite reactions. I think that is absolutely fascinating, especially as like high achievers, entrepreneurs, growth-minded individuals, that we're always so hard charging. And even if we are like a go-giver, it's a good reminder that you might be taking not necessarily from you, but from someone else. I think that is so powerful.
That I made a commitment to. And
yeah.
I'm not keeping my commitment there because I know they'll forgive me. I know they'll do it. It's like, I'm going to disappoint the people that I love the most. And I heard someone say, isn't it amazing in life if the people that you love the most know you the best and love you the most, instead of a bunch of people that don't know you, like you?
Mm.
And I think that a lot of us go for a lot of likes and miss out on a lot of love.
Can you just quickly share in terms of that like story that got you to the point where you're like, wow, okay, now what?
Yeah. Okay. Lot to unpack, but I grew up in Seattle, Washington, grew up in kind of a heritage of entrepreneurs. So my great grandpa, my grandpa, my dad, my brothers. So there was always in the back of my mind to quote unquote start a business or go for it or be a founder. But the funny thing is like, I wasn't very good at college. And for the first 10 years, kind of post college, it was a lot of just like working at different various industries and learning from people I thought were really talented, but none of it was necessarily tech and none of it was necessarily focused on being a founder. But I learned a lot and eventually found myself in the tech space. So when my now partner came to me and said, hey, I have an idea. He came to my house. We talked about it. We talked for an hour and a half. That was in February of 2016. We ended up quitting our jobs a few months later and we kind of went for it. And was like, all right, let's go build this company called Divvy. That's what we built, which was a credit card with software on it. And it was what you said, which is like, hey, I wanted to be like my great grandpa and grandpa who'd had some success. And I was like, I'm going to go for the mountaintop. And it was a journey. It was a wild ride. We made a lot of mistakes. We had a lot of down days, but we had some awesome up days. And at the end, it ended well.
That's amazing. So you clearly like took the leap, you burned the boat, so to speak, and you get there. And what was the thing that you were expecting that was completely the opposite once you actually got to that quote unquote mountaintop?
Let me actually say a few things about the actual business building, and then let's talk about the post. Because I think there are some of the misnomers that people have. So we did ours really fast. Like we started in 16, but really we went to market like a year and a half later, so 2018, and we sold in 21 for $2.5 billion. Like that, yes, that's on the outside, that's insane, and it is, and it was awesome. But there's so much more to that story in terms of some days were winning days. I used to joke, like some days I'd come home and I'd look at my wife and I'd be like, we've done it. Like we have built this monster. And other days, 2 days later, I'd come home and I'd be like, it's over. Like X and XYZ thing happened. And honestly, I think we're going to be shut down by next week and the money's going to be gone. And it's a roller coaster for sure. And what I'm telling people is usually they look at our trajectory and they say to themselves, oh, it was always a win. It was always easy. It always went up. And I'm like, every business that's worth its salt has had incredible down days. And it's not always sexy and it's not always fun. And there are days you're just like, I'm going to give up. And so, thankful that we didn't. And obviously we're grateful for the outcome, but there's a lot that goes into it, from hard work to skill to luck to macroeconomics and all the things in between. And so when you find yourself in those shoes and it's hard, or you don't see the light sometimes, like just keep holding on. It's not as bad as you think it is. And there usually is a light at the end of that tunnel.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you outline like, hey, there was like some luck, macroeconomics, right? Some timing, and just like being in the right place, right time. Do you feel that you could basically take that same recipe and replicate that again today?
No. So a few reasons, right? Like one, we created basically Venmo and Apple Pay just had come out when we started, and we were saying, let's do what they do, but for the business side of things and throw it on a credit card. So, that technology is so much easier to build today than it was then. And now there's, a lot of players building it. All the big banks are building it. If you haven't seen it, it's coming your way. And so we were like right at the forefront of technology, which allowed us to build this thing that didn't exist prior. Not to mention, 2010 to 2021 was this like historic run of what we'll call it risk on, where it was like, low interest rates. So there's valuations and fundraising and technology, like all that had to intersect with also the right talent, the right people, the right ideas to come together. So it's like, if you said to me, hey, Alex, go out and start a business today, I mean, I'm sure I can give it a run. And I'd like to think I'd have some decent shot at it because I know some of the bullets, but the reality is like that whole world, it's hard. And there's some lightning in a bottle. There's some things that you do make happen, and it's a mixture of all that. So it's hard to just be like, well, yeah, I could go start another thing and sell it for billions. I think that would be disingenuous for sure. I'm not Elon Musk.
I was told to ask you a question about getting in the car theory from Divvy. Yeah, do you mind talking about that?
So usually if I'm talking to someone who's starting a company or starting their career, I would argue it's both. Or I guess if you're recruiting. So here was the theory. We basically said to ourselves, like we were growing, we this is probably around 2019, we were about $1 million in ARR. So like our business was small, but it was starting to grow. And we were like, all right, well, what do we want out of Divvy? And our goal was to get to like 100 million in revenue. It was like, that's what we got to go do, right? So we sat there, and my partner Blake, who's our CEO, said, we said, who's gotten from 1 to 100 million in a time frame and in a style that we respect, that we think is just awesome. So we wrote it up on a whiteboard. And we said, this company, wrote about like 8. And we said, all right, let's go on LinkedIn. Let's go recruit these people. The car theory comes in of like, when you call that company, you're not actually looking for the person who is driving the car, because the car driver, and maybe Ben, I'll see if you can guess it, or if you're picking up on it. Why would you not want to recruit the car driver?
Because they're focused on driving the car, not where they're going.
So, meaning when I say, let me restate the theory. So there's these 8 companies. The car driver is the person who was the head of revenue, who led that strategy over at that company. Why would you want to not recruit that person who is the number one over at that at one of those 8 companies? Why not go for number 1, but why are you going for number 2 or number 3 or number 4?
Well, because number 1's already achieved it, and number 2 and number 4 are hungry.
Correct. That's the easiest answer is right there. But there's a little nuance to it. So number 2 and number 3 have been in the car. And this is important. They actually know the road. They know where it's going. They know what the playbook looks like. They've seen the success, but they weren't the car driver, and they want the car keys to do it a little bit of their own way, but they know enough of what's going on that they can see around corners. Whereas you're all new to it and you're getting to 1 million and you want to go to 100, every single day is a new corner. And you're like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And so for us, our theory was go to those companies that we have done the thing we wanted to do. Don't hire the number 1 person there because they've been paid and they're not hungry. Go find number 2, 3, or 4, meaning they're in the car, but they weren't driving, and give them the keys and say, come over here and drive the car for us. And it worked really, really well. Some of our best hires came utilizing that theory and following that strategy.
I mean, that's a little bit like what Richard Branson did, right? Like he's like, I don't know how to do airline. He's like, but I know people who've done it really well. And he talked about like hiring the number 2s right there.
Yeah. And by the way, this also goes for people who are not just recruiting, but if you're young in your career and you're aspiring to like, how do I position myself? I tell young people, go get in the car. What that means is like, go figure out when you got a company, figure out who the rock stars are and be like, how do I just get in this car? Do work for them for free, stay with them, and go to lunch. Like just go be in that car and do projects with those people. And ultimately you'll find yourself in a really good position because you'll have learned the way that they drive and how they approach the business. And that stuff is super, super valuable.
Yeah. So Alex, I find it really interesting. So you said, hey, you kind of sucked at college. I think most entrepreneurs, by the way, say that.
I was a geography major.
It sounds like you kind of were just treading water for 10 years. What cards did you get in before you were like, hey, I mean, you're all of a sudden go from, hey, I'm treading water to, hey, I want to go from 1 million to 100 million.
Yeah. I don't know if it'd be fair to say I was treading water. And the reason I would say that is like, it wasn't like I was making a ton of money or having big success, but I was in people's cars. So the first job I had was with a guy that had built this business, that consulted Microsoft, and I really respected him and his approach. So I went and worked with him for like a year, and I learned so much from him. And then I went to another business with one of my brother's older friends that was running something, and I loved how he built out models and how he managed companies, and I learned a bunch from him. And then I went and found another business that was doing some things I thought were interesting, and I helped bring some of the things I learned, but learned a lot from them. So I was constantly jumping into cars of successful people and watching how they operated, how they carried themselves, how they executed. And I'd like to think I was grabbing all that stuff. Ultimately, as I got more into tech and then positioned myself to do Divvy with my partner, Blake, that I was dangerous enough and had the tools enough to be like, okay, like I could do this, I could do that, and I could do that. I'm still stuck at those things, but like I have this. And ultimately then we're saying, okay, well, Blake does this, I do this, and then we could figure out who we hire around us to complement those skills. And the only thing on that is, we definitely didn't have all the world's. Here's another theory. You ready for it? The car theory is one. I'll give you one more. I call it the billboard theory. Very, very simple. I do venture capital now, so I talk to a lot of companies that are early and starting something. And one of the hardest things for them to do is to figure out not just what they're building, but who they're building it for, because it's so easy to say, well, everyone or a lot of people. And the one thing that I figured out as a sales rep is like, when is it a square peg in a round hole, and when is it a round peg that fits perfectly with the round hole? And it's the way the customer reacts. It's the way that they respond. It's you understand when you're selling something that people want, and it's called product market fit. And the billboard theory is basically, if you can't put a billboard out in that freeway, and if someone's driving 80 miles an hour past it, if they can't know that they're either the target market or not the target market as they're driving that fast with your one sentence, then you don't have product market fit. Like, you need to clarify to your target audience who they are and give them that message. And we were very good at that. It was like, we knew what product market fit looked like, and we could design it. all the other things that came around it, like management and operations and all the things that come. We could hire people that were smarter than us to do those things, but we knew what our vision was and we knew what product market fit was. And if you nail those two things, you can make a lot of mistakes and still be in a good spot.
Thank you for listening. A big thanks to Elation Lab for the production and creative design. Remember to like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Keep listening for more Max Life.